Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on the Divine Messages podcast. My name is Karina, and I am a psychic medium out of Calgary, Alberta. I have another special guest coming on here with me today. A few months ago, I had made a post on social media asking if anyone had a miracle story that they would be willing to share on the podcast. And Mandeep reached out to me and explained what her family had experienced, and I knew that we were meant to share her journey with all of you. So, everyone, please help me welcome Mandeep Atwal to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today, Karina. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on here. When I put out that post on Instagram, I think it was, I remember you had messaged me and I thought, wow, okay, this feels so right to me. I knew you were supposed to come on here. And then we had some little blurps with timing because my life had become chaotic in the last few months. But I believe
Yes,
that everything happens for a reason. And here we are today. We are ready to do this and share. So I'm so excited. And I'd like for everybody to hear your story because I think that it's going to help so many families out there. And let's go back in time because I want you to share what you had told me and what is in your book about your near death experience, if you don't mind.
for sure. So I had a very difficult and complicated delivery with my son, and he was actually delivered about 33 hours after my water had broken. And I remember hearing the words, "It's a boy," and just being excited for a split second,
Hmm.
and then thinking, I'm tired. I just need to close my eyes. Um, when I closed my eyes, all of a sudden, I felt like a film strip of my life was playing backwards from that day in the hospital to the day I was born, or it could have been a film strip of all my past lives. It was hard for me to tell because this film strip played in just a flash. And
Wow.
all of a sudden, I was surrounded by white light, all encompassing white light.
Hmm.
Um, I knew I was there. It was me. It was Mandeep, but my body wasn't there. I was in spirit form. I was energy, and
Wow.
right away I was begging what I thought was someone behind the light to go back to all the people that loved me. I was making these arguments, so to speak, that my parents, I didn't get to see them hold their first grandchild. I didn't get to see my husband hold his son. And all of this communication wasn't through words, it was telepathically. So I would
Hmm.
be thinking it, and I didn't receive any sort of response from this person I thought was behind the light, but I knew that they were understanding everything that I was saying. And the final thing I said is, I didn't even get to see my son's face or hold my baby.
Oh,
And the next thing I knew, bang, I was in the delivery room and I was opening my eyes and everything seemed white and felt like, 15 doctors and nurses surrounding me. I had wires, tubes coming out everywhere. And I remember asking them, am I going to die? Am I in heaven? Like, where
oh
am
my
I?
gosh.
And I found out afterwards that I'd actually had a major hemorrhage and my blood pressure had dropped to 40 over 21. And I was lucky to be alive.
Oh my God.
And another realization I had after is that there wasn't anybody behind the light. God or the source is in fact the light. And that's the
Yeah.
realization I had because it felt like there was somebody behind the light because it was so all encompassing. Um,
Hmm.
and at that time, I didn't realize the implications of this near death experience or why I was so desperate to come back, because we often hear that people who have near death experiences don't want to leave the light,
That's
but I
true.
did. And then only through my journey, my soul journey, my family's journey, have I now realized why I came back or wanted to come back.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that do end up in that light, even with their families here and stuff, they find it so beautiful and so peaceful that they do want to stay. So for you to fight to come back and need
Mhm.
to come back tells me why you're here. And we can share all of that right now because I think it's fascinating of how you had to be here for him.
Yes, yes. So I think, initially my thought was I came back because my son needed a mother.
Mhm.
But over time, I realized that the reason I came back is to become an advocate for autism, for my son, and for all the people in the world who have an autism diagnosis, and to ensure that they are accepted and included within our community. And this wasn't something that I just discovered overnight. It was a long journey with a lot of heartache and pain and acceptance that happened along the way that brought me to where I am today.
I love that. Your book, that you have called Noble Victory is absolutely captivating. It gave me chills. It made me tear up as I was reading it. I really believe that your words and your truth are what's going to help people because you are so brutally honest in it. And I think some people are afraid to say that this was hard. I cried about it. I was unhappy about it. I was unhappy with the, path that I was given. Those are the things
Mhm.
that you actually said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yes.
and then to come out and say, but I know it's all for a reason.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. There isn't any loving mother on this earth who wants to hear that there may be something, quote unquote, wrong with their child, or that
Hmm.
they may be facing some sort of disability, disease, anything like that.
Hmm.
And in the beginning, I wanted to help him in any way I could, but I was always afraid that if he had this label of autism, how would the world treat my son? I wasn't worried about what family would say or friends would say. None of that mattered to me. What mattered
Hmm.
to me is what would happen to him in this world, especially when I was no longer in this world. How would he manage everything?
Yeah,
And then over time, when I got to the point of acceptance after a lot of struggle, um, going through the steps of the diagnosis and the therapies, once I accepted that this was my soul journey, I received more strength, more power than I ever thought that I could have. And that's what's brought me here today.
that's amazing. And maybe we could go back a little bit as well to when he was first born and some of the things that you noticed, because I think for parents, especially first-time parents, because he was your first child, we're just trying to figure things out. Even our second, third, whatever, we're still trying to figure things out. There is no manual to having a child. And the things that, we worry about, maybe we're missing so many things. Maybe a lot of parents are in denial. There's
Mhm.
so much that I think is unknown. And for you to shed some light on those parents that maybe are trying to figure something out with their small toddler or child, this may help them a little bit. Well,
For
or a
sure.
lot. Yes.
Yes, for sure. So my son initially, he walked when he was supposed to, sat up, that all hitting all those milestones. He said his first word when he was about 10 months old. And then after he turned one, we noticed sort of a shift or a change. So he didn't accumulate any further language. He would have difficulties eating. He wasn't able to actually swallow the food. I had to make sure his food was pureed. He would choke if it was anything bigger than small pieces or pureed food. He
Hmm.
had a lot of sensory kind of overload issues. At that time, I didn't understand it, but now I do. If we took him to the mall or family get-togethers, he would spend the whole time crying, and we didn't understand what was wrong. Was he hungry? Was he tired? He had an unbelievable amount of energy, and I'm not talking about the regular energy that toddlers have, where parents find themselves exhausted at the end of the day. It was like he was running on a motor. So my eyes couldn't be off of him, even for a second.
Hmm.
So it was extremely overwhelming to take a child out who wasn't able to communicate with you how they're feeling. I didn't understand what you were telling them, and had all of these sensory and sensory processing and overload issues that you didn't actually understand at that time where they're coming from or what it was that was bothering him. So
Hmm.
when he was two, I started to I knew something was up, something was different. He was learning in a different way. I started getting him speech therapy through Alberta Health Services. And after that, approximately 8 months, when he was almost three, they had indicated that he would require a multidisciplinary team as he was facing challenges in many different areas. And so at the age of 3, he started receiving intensive intervention with speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, behavioral therapist, special education teachers, and an aide that would accompany him to preschool.
Mhm.
And although at that time I wasn't prepared to accept a diagnosis of autism, the one thing that my husband and I always said is we would get him every and any support he needed to develop and to grow, regardless of what the diagnosis was.
Mhm.
So that was the beginning of our journey. And we continued to have him receive this intervention, this therapy, um, till about 8 years old, where it was very intense. And we saw tremendous gains. I still remember the day when he was about 3.5 years old, and he started repeating every word that the aide in the home was saying to him.
Aw.
And it was just, I will never forget that moment, tears streaming down my face. And I'm like, we did it. We did it. We're here. And although that was a huge victory, I didn't understand at that time how much more work had to be done.
Mhm. And how did it go from then on? Like, did he stop therapy? What do they do actually? Do they continue on? Does he see someone all the time?
Yeah, so he received therapy, intensive therapy, until he was 8 years old through a multidisciplinary team. He received supports in school as well. And so he would work, he amazes me what a resilient child he was and is. He would go to school for full days, come home, and then work for 2 hours doing therapies and with his aide and support people that would come into the home. And so that would continue. And then when they would leave, my husband and I would continue with him, teaching him words, teaching him social skills, just going outside, trying to ride his bike, even motor planning and motor skills. Those were big challenges for him as well. And even after the age of 8, when he wasn't receiving support from a multidisciplinary team, we still continued with supports outside of school and in school, but then we started focusing more on activities outside of school. So we
Okay.
had him in soccer, we had him in horseback riding and skating and swimming, just to develop social skills, but also to develop his own skills to give him the confidence that he needed. And he officially received a diagnosis of autism when he was 7. And we had been getting the help that he needed the entire time, not worried about whether it was an autism diagnosis or not, just worrying about whether we are giving him the support he actually needed. And I
Right.
remember the day when his doctors came to the school, they did an in school observation, and they told us in a very supportive way that your son has autism. And I remember at that moment, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel broken. I was in complete acceptance.
Wow.
And at that moment, I felt more power and strength than I'd ever felt in those previous 7 years. And I remember my husband and I walked out of that room from that meeting, and we just felt our souls vibrate at a different frequency. We felt more
Ooh,
powerful
I have chills. Uh-huh.
because we'd accepted our soul journey. And I learned that in that moment in time, and I continue to learn that every day of my life since that moment.
Oh my goodness, my hair is standing all over my body. To me, that is, it's beautiful, really. I think, we do sometimes question our journey and we are angry at the universe sometimes. And I don't think a lot of people admit that.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we do have those moments of why me? Why do I have to go through this? And when we do have that awakening, that acceptance of this is what my soul chose to come back and do, everything just kind of puzzles together and we just go through life with blind faith rather than all the fear that's attached to it.
Yes, I agree with you. When you were saying, once you accept your soul journey, that there's so much power in that. And once I accepted that, then I understood why I had that near death experience and why I was so desperate to come back. Because It was my responsibility and my honor, not just to take care of my son, but also to become an autism advocate. And I talk about it very frankly in my book about how broken and sad I felt. I would go into my son's room late at night when he was asleep, when he was about 3 or 4 years old, and I would rub his head and I would think about how normal everything seemed. There was no therapies, no concerns, nothing. He just was this beautiful boy sleeping. And I just wanted to live in that moment. And it scared me to think what the future would hold. And every night when I crawled into his room, tears would stream back down my face with pain and worry about what would happen to us in the future.
Wow.
And, I look at that mom now and I see the growth from that day. And it didn't happen overnight. It took years of love and dedication and commitment and hard work for our family to get to the point that we are today.
I think what you just said is so powerful. It is hard work. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. It's hard work, and everything is not going to be perfect all the time. And it's not perfect for anybody. And I've realized I used to say to my friends, I'm like, when my son finishes grade 6, when he finishes grade 12, when he has a job, when he gets married, when he learns how to drive, then I'll breathe.
Yeah,
But I've learned now that life isn't perfect for anybody. This is a soul journey. As long as we're learning, we're growing, and we're working, we've created our perfect journey. And I don't hold my breath anymore. I breathe every day, and that gives me power and strength.
that's amazing. And how did you end up writing this book? Like that to me is, going through that journey of those years of therapies and all the hard work. What led you to this book?
It's pretty amazing how everything works out. So my background, I'm a lawyer. So I went to law school, and I remember thinking when I'd be home with my son when he was 3 or 4 years old, is this my life? Did I go to school for 9 years, post-secondary education, to be sitting in this caged up family room because I had it blocked off everywhere because he was just running around and touching everything. Safety was a concern.
Wow.
And I would question my life and say, why did I, work as a trial lawyer and do all these things when I felt like I wasn't accomplishing anything in my life? But I realized over time that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I started to use my legal skills to advocate for my son. And then I started using the skills to advocate for other people within our community. I started volunteering with Autism Calgary, doing presentations in the community, raising education. And I remember people would always say to me, you need to write a book about your story, about what happened, about all the things that you've gone through.
Hmm.
And I just felt this overpowering urge, to sit down and write the book after all the advice I was getting from so many people encouraging me to write this book. And I feel like once I sat down and actually started writing it, the words were just flowing through me. And it was so easy for me to put on paper what I felt because it was my truth. It was honest. I was saying it from my heart and soul. So that's essentially the reason. And I wanted to help other people. It wasn't just my responsibility to help my son, but I really truly believe that it's my responsibility to help other families and other people in the world who are going through similar challenges. And that actually gives my soul peace and joy.
I wish that everybody could read this book because maybe they have a friend or a family member that has a child that is going through something that
Mhm.
maybe they're feeling so alone and they don't know where to turn. And you have incredible resources in the book. You share, your story so well. You are so honest. And I think so many people really need to hear your words. It's a phenomenal book. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karina. And that's what I always say. I say that it's not just my story. It's our story as a human race, as mothers, as fathers, as caregivers, going through soul journeys, going through losses. I talk about huge loss in the book as well that I faced, questioning ourselves, what we're doing in this world to make ourselves happy, to make the world a better place. So it's not just about autism, it's an inspirational story about soul journeys and how to find true joy in your life. And I actually say in the book that when you find that missing piece, you
Mhm.
find the piece that you've been missing. And I
Oh, so good.
and I truly find that I found that missing piece. And now I have peace because I know why I am here. I know what my job is on this earth. And it gives me an energy that it's difficult to explain in words, but that energy is in my soul and it's around me all the time because I know I'm doing it with an honest heart and I love what I do.
I really could feel it when I was reading it. I felt your heart, your soul, your purpose, and I think that's why, when you reached out to me and you shared your story, I thought I have to have you on here because this to me is it's what I try to explain to so many people about our soul's path. And we may not always understand the path, and the struggles are real. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a sugar coated life. And I think even when we have a spiritual awakening, I think most people assume, oh, thank God, I'm going to feel fantastic now. And it's not so much so.
No,
No,
no.
the soul's awakening, and the path is it's very lonely, it's scary,
Yes.
it's hard work. And a lot of people just, will close that door and they're not willing to do the work. And the ones that are, I will say it's like going, through hell and back, like you're just up and
Yes.
down. It's a roller coaster and you have to hang on for the ride. But when you come to that place of, like you said, acceptance, everything just opens up and you start to understand that you're not being punished. This is your soul's path, your soul's journey that you agreed to, and to have your soul grow and evolve. And as you're going through it, even though it's difficult, the fear dissipates and the faith becomes stronger. And all of a sudden, you feel like you're not walking alone. You've got, your wonderful guides behind you and all of spirit really supporting you. And that's what kept me alive and kept me going because I knew that I wasn't alone.
Absolutely. It's funny you said that because one of the chapters in my book is called The Struggle is Real. But
Yeah, of
and
course.
I believe that struggle is growth. And I believe that my son is my mentor. He's my soul teacher. I chose him and he chose me. I used to think that God gave me my soul journey, but now my thinking has changed. I believe that I chose my soul journey to help my soul to learn and grow. It wasn't God's decision, it was my decision. So once we find our soul journey, you're right. It's we still go through hardship, we still struggle, but there's this energy, this faith that resonates inside of you that keeps you going day after day. There are days you feel down and alone or you cry, but you are able to pick yourself up and keep going. And that's the amazing thing about understanding what your soul journey is all about.
So true. I wish that everybody could have that understanding. Life would be, I wouldn't say easier because it's not easier, but it's
No.
more, I don't even know if I have the right word for it, manageable, I suppose.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
to me, I've had a really tough journey my entire life. And then, it hasn't gotten any easier. I've just been able to have the strength to deal with what gets thrown at me. And
Hmm.
so to me, then instead of going into full fear, which I used to, I mean,
Hmm.
I was the person that, lived in fear mode and I was so afraid of, even my own shadow. I was afraid of everything.
Hmm.
And when I realized that I had this purpose and I had to start sharing, like even with the podcast. I mean, even when I started this, I thought, who the heck is going to listen to me? Who am I? But what I've learned is that I feel that being so real and honest on this podcast really allows others to look at their lives and go, oh my God, it's okay. I can be upset. I can be frustrated. I can be a spiritual person and still be frustrated, angry, and have all of those negative emotions, but we don't sit in it for long. We shake
Mm,
it off and we move forward and we have that acceptance, right? Some people
absolutely.
stay in that negativity, and it's easy to stay there. I mean, I think we're human. We have human emotions. I can't sit here and say as a spiritual healer that I have the perfect life and look how happy I am all the time. That wouldn't be the truth. The
Hmm.
truth is I have good days, bad days. I cry, I get frustrated, I get angry just like everybody else. But I
Hmm.
have all the tools to bring myself out of it. I don't allow myself to stay down that long because I know I have work to do. And I don't like that feeling. I want to
Yes.
feel empowered and feel that strength from spirit come through me and that they can push me along and know I can get through anything.
Yes, absolutely. And when we live in that faith and not fear, it's amazing because I find that for me at least, living in that fear, then you attract the fear. You attract more
Yes.
fear and negativity. But when you live in faith, it's not something that you can measure. It's just something you believe. And you're okay with that. That gives you more strength. And you know how, Karina, you were talking about the impact we think we can make, in people's lives, or what difference we can make. We have no idea of the tremendous impact that we can make in a person's life. And it's so important that we don't doubt our strength as a human being to make a difference. Small differences in the world every single day, we can have a tremendous impact on the world. I call it the ripple effect. So
That's so
something
true.
that we do nice today can, spread out into the world. And I always tell my kids, I said, you can doubt the whole world, but never doubt yourself or your strength as a human being to make a difference.
Oh, I love that. It's so true. It's so true. Think about that for a second. If we're stuck in that fear mode and we're just attracting all these negative things to us, it is mindset, right?
It
Change your
is.
life, change your narrative. And when we do that and we start to, I know people will start saying, well, how do you think, in a positive way? How can I do that? How? All
Mm-hmm.
I say is it takes one step, right?
Yes, yes.
One thought, one step, and it can be life changing.
And it truly does open new doors and opportunities, and positive things just come to you. So when you start thinking in that positive way, those types of people, that type of energy is going to be attracted to you. So it's something that I think we can say, but to really live it and experience it, someone has to believe it. And belief systems are within the person. They have to change the belief system. I mean, I wasn't always positive and thinking everything's going to be great. I was devastated thinking about what my life would be like, what my son's life would be like, how it would be for our family if my child was diagnosed with autism. I was scared. So I had to bring myself out of that. Nobody could do that for me. People could tell me it's going to be okay, you're going to be fine, but the person who had to believe it was me. And once I did and took those positive steps, it changed our lives for the better.
And I love that. It's so true. Look at what you can now share with others to help them on that path to push them out of that. And that's even with the podcast. Again, I felt like, who's going to listen to me? I wasn't perfect. I had all these, emotions and these negative thoughts and everything, just like everybody else. But when I started to at least be real about it and honest about it, I said, as long as I can even just help one person on their path to get them to where I've grown to, maybe
Mm-hmm.
this will be something that can get out there. And then all of a sudden, all these people started to message me from all over the world. And they were saying, I listened to your episode and I experienced the same thing. And I'm like, really? It helped you? Oh
Yes.
my God. And I was
Yes.
like, I was blown away because I thought, I am human. I have faults. I am not a spiritual guru. There are none. Nobody's perfect.
That's
And
right.
to be relatable is what is crucial to help people dissipate that fear, right?
Absolutely. It's the honesty, standing for something in honesty and with a pure heart. People can see that, and people come towards that. It's an energy, it's a light that everybody wants within their heart as well. And I think that's the most important thing, is just being truthful. And when we're truthful, we say we're human. We have hardships. That's what we're going through in our soul journeys, and we're learning and growing every single day. That will
Mhm.
happen for the rest of our lives.
Yep. And I actually read this one part in your book where you had said you had gone into your, I think it was your living room, and you were down on the ground in like fetal
Mm.
position, just sobbing. And you were having all of those thoughts, right? Of why
Yes.
me? How can I get through
Oh,
this? Like,
yes.
of course. And that's why I loved the book so much, because you did write the truth. If you just
Yes.
said, "Oh, I went to all these appointments, everything was wonderful," and you know, nobody's gonna really learn their lessons here. Like it's so important that you were that brutally honest, because you were saying
Yes.
like, "Why me? How can
Oh,
I do this? Why
yes.
did this happen?" All of these things, and then you said that he saw you
Mm.
and looked right at you, and you could feel it in his soul that he was like, it's okay. And
Yeah.
you grabbed him and hugged him, and you know it's those moments that teach us, right? We're going to have that moment of fear
Yes.
and upset, and something can shift it. So like just like he did, when he
Ah,
came up and hugged you, and you're like, oh my God, I can do this, I can do this.
yes.
He
Yes.
needs me, this is what I have to do. And so I think it's incredible that you were so honest in it.
Yes, I will never forget that day. It was a tough, tough day. And I remember the feeling I was having as I was curled up in a little ball and crying. But in that moment of tremendous pain and weakness, I felt so much strength when my son came up to me, that little boy looking into his eyes, um, because my lesson to be learned in that moment was unconditional love. There wasn't anything that I wouldn't do for that little boy. And I had to pick myself up off that floor and do things right for him. And when I started to realize that, it gave me strength. And throughout the book, I talk about a drop in a bucket, a drop in a bucket. When we do
Mhm.
something, when I got up off that floor, I put a drop in the bucket. When you look at that bucket and you see that one drop, it doesn't seem like very much. But when you look at that bucket a week later, 6 months later, a year later, 50 years later, it's filled and overflowing with strength. And that's what you have to look at. Every little step you take matters and makes a difference, whether it's in your own family or whether it's to help other people in the world. And I truly believe that. And I have my son to thank for that life lesson.
That's amazing. And you just shared with me earlier today that
Mm-hmm.
his birthday is coming up.
Yes, yes.
And he is about to be 18.
Yes, yes. He's going to be 18 years old uh, on May 12th, which is Mother's Day this year. So
What
I
a
get
gift.
emotional even talking about it because I feel like we have come full circle. Um, our journey isn't over. Our struggles aren't over. When I say full circle, is from this little boy where I didn't know where our journey was going to turning 18 years old on Mother's Day. He made me a mother. And it's just such an overwhelming feeling. And he will always have shelter under my umbrella to care for him and to love him and to know that mom is always there. But I feel such joy looking at this young man before me. I can't believe that he's my child sometimes because he's so big. But
Yeah.
just looking at him and thinking, kiddo, you did it. You did it. You worked hard and you're making such a positive impact in the world, and I will make sure that he's taken care of for the rest of his life and that I continue to advocate for him and in turn all those with autism who face challenges similar to my son. My job is to ensure inclusion. That is the number one thing, and I'm so thankful to my son for giving me that gift and that understanding of my soul journey.
I love that. And the one thing I did want to mention as well is you also said something to me that I thought was really special. The name of your book.
Yes. So the name of my book, Noble Victory, my daughter's name, it means noble woman, and my son's name means guardian of victory. And so that's how I came up with the name Noble Victory. And when I named them, I had no idea the importance or the impact that their names would have in the world. And now their names are out in the world through my book. So it's a very, very emotional name and sentimental name for me of the book.
Amazing. I am so glad that you came on here with me today. And I just really think it's going to help so many people, like so many friends that I know that may be pregnant right now or have a family member who's pregnant. And just to be able to pay attention to the little red flags that we get, from an early stage. Like I know some people look back in hindsight and say, oh my God, I knew it, but I waited, or I was afraid to look at it, or I was in denial. Early intervention is key. And I've heard that so many times about autism, that early intervention is key.
Absolutely. That is very, very important. Just with, I found with our son, the brain development and the skills, learning those skills early on because he was developing habits and we wanted him to develop habits in certain areas, in certain ways. So it would make it easier for him to express himself. We always explain to him that we're not trying to change who he is. We just want him to be able to show the world who he is. So that early intervention piece in our experience is critical, is very, very important. And although I was not prepared to accept that autism diagnosis early on, I still made sure that he received the therapies and treatments that he needed in order to be successful at every stage of his life.
That's incredible. Okay, and would you be able to share how people can find you or find your book?
For
So,
sure. So my website is noblevictory.com, and on there you can find all my social media accounts as well as a bookstore. And the book is being sold at various retailers, including Amazon, Indigo, the Friesen Press Bookstore, Apple Books, Kobo, and Kindle. And the entire list will be on the website. And I wanted to mention as well that our family has created a registered nonprofit foundation called the Noble Victory Autism Foundation. And that was a passionate dream of ours since our son was diagnosed with autism. And the royalties from the book will be used to develop sustainable supports and services for those with autism through our family's nonprofit charity.
amazing. I love all of that. I really want to thank you so much for coming on here today with me and being so open and honest with everyone and sharing your journey.
Thank you so much for having me today, Karina. It was an honor.
And I want to thank all of you for joining us today on the Divine Messages podcast. Please bear in mind that the perspectives and opinions represented in this podcast are based solely on the Divine Messages interpretations. We can in no way be held responsible for the actions of our followers.